we are following pre-reaction, can't have reaction yet, speech hasn't happened yet, pre-reaction from Democrats and Republicans, of course, ahead of tonight's State of the Union address. CBS News' Nikole Killion joins us now. Nikole, you've been talking to members of Congress. What they say?
You know, what's interesting about this State of the Union is that when you talk to Democrats, they say that they want to hear about issues like the economy, what the president's message is going to be with respect to democracy and protecting reproductive freedoms. When you talk to a lot of Republicans, they say they're just not interested. Take a listen to some of the members that we talked to earlier today.
I stopped listening to President Biden months ago. I think most of America stopped listening to what President Biden has to say. His words do not match up his actions, and we've given up on him. Just like he's given up on us that live along the border.
So when my GOP colleagues say that they really don't want to hear from the president, I take them at their word. They have lost the arts of democratic dialogue and compromise.
I want to hear his call for an immediate and lasting ceasefire in Gaza. I want to hear about him calling for the release of hostages, but also those being arbitrarily detained.
I want to hear him say Laken Riley's name. He's not recognized Laken Riley, 22-year-old nursing student who was murdered. He hasn't recognized her family, and the tragic loss that they're having a very hard time dealing with. And I think he needs to apologize to America.
So again, that was Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who did say she did want to hear from the president with respect to Laken Riley. Of course, we know the House just passed the Laken Riley Act, which basically would allow the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, to detain immigrants who commit theft-related offenses. So this is in response to the murder of that nursing student in Georgia, obviously an attempt by House Republicans to put the border front and center.
Not just the border, but once people are inside the country, if they are or become aware of local law enforcement, that they should do something about it and not release, as this alleged killer of Laken Riley did.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, what's interesting with respect to the bill is that you have Democrats who overwhelmingly voted against this. There were about 37 Democrats who did support it, but many of them see this as an attempt on the part of House Republicans to try to exploit the death of Laken Riley. Still, though, it will be interesting to see if the president says her name in some capacity. That is certainly, as you heard from the congresswoman there, what some lawmakers want to see. I would also note, though, too, we heard in the middle of that mashup from Congresswoman Cori Bush, and I think this is another issue to watch tonight, how far the president goes with respect to this issue of calling for a ceasefire. We've heard from the vice president on this issue, but in terms of the president, there are many progressive Democrats who feel very strongly about this. They will be wearing pins tonight. So again, as of now, we're not expecting any protest on the part of members, but should be interesting to see how they react and respond to this issue should the president raise it this evening.
It's interesting because they're saying, we're not paying attention, but they are trying to send a message. Really quickly, the speaker has an interesting guest tonight as well.
He does. He has invited the parents of Evan Gershkovich, correct, the Wall Street Journal reporter. And this is significant, obviously, because this puts the issue of Russia and Ukraine certainly front and center, even at a time where the speaker is not committed to putting forth a bill to address Ukraine aid. Still, it's in a holding pattern.
Yeah, that contrast is fascinating to watch. Nikole Killion, thank you so much. We know you'll be watching tonight as well. And let's bring in Bob Costa, who joins us now from the newsroom in our Washington bureau. Bob, good to see you. So we've been talking tonight about how this is the State of the Union, of course, but it's also seen as kind of the kickoff for Biden's re-election campaign, especially coming on the heels of Super Tuesday. What are you looking for in terms of a campaign pitch here?
It's great to be with both of you. Wish I was standing outside on Capitol Hill. I'm sitting here in the bureau. I don't know what straw I picked today at CBS. But look, for a lot of voters, this is not just the kickoff for the Biden campaign. This is the kickoff of starting to pay attention to what's going on in Washington. I mean, President Biden is so unlike his predecessor, former President Trump, in terms of trying to get headlines all the time, being this almost celebrity force in American politics. So for many Americans who I've spoken to on the campaign trail in recent weeks, they say the State of the Union, that's a time they're just going to listen. What's the president been up to? What is he doing? And it's not so much a campaign moment, but a presidential moment for someone who is not always trying to consume American life.
And Bob, it's clear that former President Trump is also in campaign mode. He has been in it today on his social media platform. He intends to be on it tonight in a sort of rapid response way. What's all that about?
He has pledged to be on his social media platform and give so-called play-by-play commentary of the State of the Union address. But so much of what he does on social media is much more a play for galvanizing his base supporters. His Truth Social account has broken through with many Republicans I've encountered on the trail, but it's not necessarily something that dominates the national debate in any way. So look at him tonight to take some pot shots, to really offer some sharp criticism of President Biden.
And Bob, we are also going to hear from Katie Britt, the Alabama senator. How should we kind of look at this speech tonight? I think we're all also kind of in this campaign lens, looking at people who may be selected, or maybe that the former president may be looking at to join the ticket or be a face of the campaign.
It's interesting. You and I have covered Capitol Hill together for a while, Caitlin, and so often people are talked about as vice presidential contenders when it comes to getting this response to the State of the Union. But it can also be perilous for so many aspiring politicians. I remember Senator Marco Rubio reaching for the water bottle. You remember that moment? Or Bobby Jindal, the former governor of Louisiana, having kind of an awkward setting for his response to a presidential speech. So Katie Britt, a young senator considered dynamic by many Republicans, a future star of the party, maybe even a star tonight in the eyes of Republicans. But at the same time, this is a speech that is very limited in scope. You don't have a ton of time, so it might be an introductory moment for her to the country, but it's not necessarily something that's going to secure her a spot on the ticket unless she really hits it out of the park.
As Bobby Jindal remembers, beware of the State of the Union staircase. Bob Costa, thank you very much.